Hello, everyone. This is your host, Debra Poneman, and I'd like to welcome you to our call with today's guest, Rydall. The #1 expert on the Law of Emergence, Derek is a part of a new generation of spiritual visionaries and revolutionary thought leaders. He's trained top executives at Fortune 500 companies in communications and empowered leadership, from American Express to Disney. He's coached Oscar and Emmy winning celebrities and media professionals on creating conscious entertainment. He's a professional screenwriter, a best-selling author, and a regular contributor to the Huffington Post. Through 2 decades of speaking, teaching, coaching, and writing, Derek has built a global platform that touches hundreds of thousands of people around the planet with his message on finding your path, living your purpose, and making a powerful impact in the world. And today you're going to discover the real cause of death. And by the way, it's not at all what you think, and how to eliminate it once and for all. Why most manifestation techniques fail or even make things worse, and the revolutionary principle that will get you off that hamster wheel of self-improvement forever. Also, you'll discover the 7 gifts that give you everything. Mastering these will unlock the mysteries of abundance and start a flow of good in your life that nothing can stop. And Derek is also going to do energy work on this training to instantly shift your frequency, clear wealth blockages, and activate more of your power than ever before. Well, I am very excited. I love Derek Rydall. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the call.
Oh, thank you, Debra. I love you too. It's so great to be here. It's really an honor and a real pleasure.
Well, whenever I see on my schedule Derek Rydall, I'm like, yay! I'm like a little kid, yay, yay! I jump up and down. I really do. Anyway, and I know everybody else is going to jump up and down after they hear what you have to say, because you are such an amazing teacher and such an amazing, I'd say, facilitator in people's transformation. And like I say, everybody, hold on to your seat, because you're about to experience something really powerful. And I would love for you to take a couple minutes and share what you believe to be the major turning points that allowed you to manifest your current level of success, touching so many lives around the planet. Tell us about how this all happened.
Yeah, and there's, a lot of people have heard my story, and I'll say, the portion of it that most people have heard briefly. But, basically, like a lot of people, I was spending a lot of time struggling to improve my life, to heal from a bad childhood, to, the heartbreaks, the heartaches, the losses, the failures, all that kind of stuff. And after years of various modalities, including years of therapy, the only thing I'd really improved was my ability to very eloquently articulate why my life was so screwed up. But there wasn't really much transformational value in all of that attempt to improve my life. In fact, it actually drove me to become addicted ultimately to drugs and alcohol, and to almost die from an overdose. And finally, it was a second near-death experience where I was trapped in an underwater reef in this pocket where I almost drowned. And at a certain point in this experience, where I was surrounded by fire coral and spiked coral, and I could barely breathe because my stomach would have been skewered by these giant spikes, and I couldn't get out of the water. I couldn't see where I was. I was completely trapped. My mind going through all of these different scenarios of maybe I would be saved, or, and even at one point I was imagining if I died, I was an actor at the time, and I was thinking, well, at least maybe I would become famous posthumously. So it's kind of funny, even in the last gasp, my ego was still looking for its 15 minutes of fame. But at some point in that experience, which lasted for quite a long time, I reached the end of my mind's tapes and scenarios and all the ways it was trying to control the situation and all the negotiations I'd made with the universe, God, please get me out of this. I'll go to church on Sunday, whatever. It reached the end of all of that. There was nothing else. And all that was left was to let go. Again, it wasn't a surrender like It wasn't a negotiation surrender. Like I said, please God, I surrender if you just get me out of this. It was, I had to completely let go. I wasn't afraid I was going to drown. I knew that I was going to. And in that moment of unconditional surrender, something inside of me cracked open. I like to say that Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and my ego was ripped from its moorings, and there was a crack in that armor, in that identity, and a light shone through. And I didn't have the words for it. I just had the moment of it. And in that moment, this wave came and lifted me up out of the spot where I was trapped and put me on top of the coral reef, where I could finally stand up and see where I'd been caught in this giant labyrinth of an underwater maze. And I saw that the exit had been just inches away from me the whole time. And it became a metaphor for my whole life. I'd been swimming through this maze of my life, following all these shiny objects, trying to find some kind of connection, and was myself trapped and drowning and gasping for air in my own life. And all along, the exit from this confined sense of identity was inches away. And I was able to then slip out of this labyrinth, this maze, and swim away. But like I said, something cracked open in me. And the person that swam away was not the same person that swam into that coral reef. And for the next year, I struggled with death dreams and destruction dreams. And I didn't understand it then, but in retrospect, I understand that a part of me was dying. The ego, a part of my ego was dying, an identity was dying that thought it was in control. And the ego doesn't know the difference between actual death and psychological death. And so it was interpreting that as all these dreams and anxiety. And I eventually pulled out of society, got rid of TV and newspapers and books and all this stuff, and just was going to become a monk, actually, but ended up cloistering myself in my apartment and meditating for a couple years. And the experience that I had was I got reacquainted with this glimpse that I caught in that reef, this self within me, this dimension of me that had never been diminished or damaged by my experience, by my history. And so it didn't need to be fixed. It didn't need to be healed. It was already whole and complete, so it could not be improved upon. That self-improvement was really an oxymoron when you understand the true nature of the self. That already this self within me was whole, was intact, was complete, was a masterpiece that was beyond the human imagination. As Rumi said, if you could behold your true self, you would bow to yourself in worship. And that's the self I began to become reacquainted with. And of course, this wasn't special to me. What I could obviously understand was that it was universal to everyone. And what I saw was that all of my struggling to achieve and attract and manifest that was largely coming from this identity of a self that was broken, damaged, that something was missing, something was lacking, that most of those efforts were exacerbating the very problems in my life. They were creating an increased sense of lack and creating the very resistance that was blocking the abundance and the wholeness that was already in me trying to get out. That my desire to have a better life, to have more abundance, to have whatever, that desire was the wealth and abundance itself in me trying to emerge. But all of my efforts to make it happen or pull it to me were actually blocking it and creating all the suffering that I was experiencing. And I realized that just like the oak tree is already in the acorn, and the acorn doesn't have to go out and build an oak, achieve an oak, attract an oak, that when it remains planted in the soil and the right conditions are created, the oak tree of its being naturally emerges. And that's where I first coined the term the law of emergence, as opposed to the law of attraction or any of the other things, because I realized that it was already in us and that all we needed to do was become in integrity, congruent with our true self, this true pattern, this seed pattern of infinite potential planted in the soil of our soul. And when we did that, it would begin to emerge in our life and evolve our life in ways that was beyond our imagination, often better than we could conceive of, and often without the struggle and the stress that so often accompanies when we're trying to make something of ourselves, that it wasn't about making something happen, it was about making something welcome. And so that was really the beginning of my journey, and what brought me from being broken, suicidal, addicted to drugs and alcohol and losing the love of my life and living in a one-room apartment, eating 19-cent boxes of Kraft macaroni and cheese, to living in million-dollar homes and traveling the world, making a living, doing what I love, and making an impact and creating a life that reflected my deepest values. So that was what started that journey. And we're going to talk about today, I know more of specifically awakened wealth and specifically how I understood this emergence model from the paradigm of wealth creation and abundance and having all your needs met. And we can certainly have another really intense story I'll share with you about that, but I wanted to give you a moment to jump in there if you had any questions about that.
Well, the few things. One is that you added something to your story. Every time I hear that story about the coral reef, I'm still like shaking because I think you're not going to get out. But then I know that you did because you're here with me today. But it's the first time I ever heard you fess up that you were thinking, well, I'm an actor, at least I'll be famous posthumously.
I think it was pronounced posthumously, but maybe it is
posthumously. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you said that so mellifluously. But anyway, that's the first time I ever heard you say that. I think that's hysterical.
Not that, but I was imagining at one point, I literally had a moment where I imagined the cast of the movie I was in all standing on the shore, holding hands, I kid you not, where my body had floated up to the shore, bloated and blue-lipped, and the police were surrounded with police tape, and they were, wheeling me off on a gurney, and all the cast is like holding hands and crying and, sobbing, and all the really beautiful girls that I didn't get a chance to date were like crying, and, that's how crazy the ego is. I'm literally drowning, and the ego is thinking, God, if I could have only gotten a date with that woman. It's like, it was crazy.
Oh, that is so great. See, I have to interview you many more times because each time I hear a little bit more, bit more about you and your story is revealed. That is that's off the charts. And, while you were saying that also, every time I listen to you, I discover another layer of profundity of what you teach. And it finally occurred to me why you say that most manifestation techniques fail or make things worse, and the way that we can get off of that hamster wheel. Because when you said was that the desire was the wealth itself trying to emerge. I think that's what you said. The desire was the wealth itself. And you just have to get out of the way and align and not try to make it happen from the outside in, but allow it to emerge. And I got that.
Yeah, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, we must remove our bloated sense of nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. And because really the word desire itself, the key is right in the word, and that is the word desire comes from a root that means of the sire, means of the father or of the creative principle, or another definition is from the stars or from the heavens. So the desire is not telling you what your burning desires are not telling you what you are lacking that you have to go out and get. They're telling you what's within you trying to get out, that you're pregnant with something, that you've immaculately conceived something, and it's trying to emerge now. And it's kind of like, you maybe heard me use the analogy, it's like a woman who's pregnant who's now going to go out and try using all these techniques to make a baby happen, to manifest a baby. And she would look kind of crazy if she was doing that. But that's kind of how we mostly operate. But really, because we don't understand, and even like I said, even the word itself is telling us, when we understand the real meaning of it, that our burning desires are already the guarantee that we've got it. And that's why when somebody comes to me for healing work and they say, I really, and I can hear the passion in their voice, the desire for a healing or whatever it is, I immediately drop down into gratitude. It's like, thank you, life, that they already have this. Because they've already showing me. They're showing me that they've already got it. And so my prayer work, whatever, for them becomes just an affirmation and a blessing and a support and a nurturing of this new baby, this new child of their potential that's trying to be born through them. And now there's no resistance, and we're not creating any new karma. Because even if you do manage to willfully manifest something through the law of mind, and you're basically just, manipulating atoms around and manipulating material appearances, what often happens is you may get a bigger paycheck, but then you find yourself broke at a higher income bracket. As I say, you may get a bigger house, but you find yourself even less at home. You may get a new relationship, but you eventually are in the same arguments because no real evolution has happened. More money may have shown up, but more of you hasn't shown up. Do you know what I mean? And that's what our soul really cares about, and that's what our goals at the truest level are for, is not so much about what we're going to get or achieve, but what more of us is going to come out as a result of it. More confidence, more expanded consciousness, more sense of empowerment, more sense of freedom and fulfillment, and real joy and real inspiration. So at the end of the year or the end of the day, if you've merely achieved a task, but you're the same person, from the soul's level, that day or that year is considered a non-event. I had no idea I was going to talk about this. You just pulled something out of me that's pretty mystical teaching. But you get the point, right, Debra? It's very powerful. So the whole universe, this is the thing I want people to understand, is that the whole universe, and it's one of the principles of awakened wealth, the universe is set up to fail you. It's set up this way to fail you when you make something or someone outside of you your source, instead of understanding that it's all within you trying to come out. It's set up to fail you, because if you don't, as long as you think your good is out there in something or someone or in some future time, then you begin to manipulate and control and cajole and twist yourself into a pretzel to try to get what you think you don't have, or to keep what you think somebody else has given to you and what you don't think you really possess. And so you're not really able to show up authentically. You're not really able to share your authentic gifts. You're not really able to be in power because you've given your power away to the degree you believe someone or something is your source of your good, of your safety, security, supply, your wealth, whatever. And so the universe is designed for that to eventually fail you so that you come back home again to the only place where your source exists, to the only place where you can ever really get anything substantial, and that's within you. That's the true source and substance of the wealth of your life. And I learned that a very difficult and interesting way, and I can share that story at some point today. But that's a very important.
Share it now.
Okay. So basically for me, I'd gone along and I was doing all this work and I had these breakthroughs, but then, I was living off of my savings. And at some point, my savings was dwindling, and until I was broke. And again, I was so angry because I was like, I'm doing all this good work. I thought I understood, that God or source or whatever is within me and it's trying to emerge and all this stuff. And I was so frustrated and confused. And I remember at one point, the landlord was knocking at the front door and the bill collector was calling on the phone or knocking at the back door. And I'm sitting in my meditation chair in the middle going, God, why have you forsaken me? And I sort of had one of my Gary Sinise moment, from Forrest Gump, where he's like on the top of the mast of the ship and he's shaking his fist at the heavens and saying, "Bring it on, God." And I was like that. I was like, this is not right. This whole thing is either a bunch of BS or there's something I'm not getting, but I'm sitting in my chair and I'm not getting up until I got this. And so I sat in that meditation chair and, daylight turned into dusk and the crickets came out for their nightly chorus and I wrestled my angels and demons like Jacob until they had me pinned to the floor. But at some point in the middle of the night, this voice or this energy came over me and it basically said, you made your savings account your God. You made your savings account your source. And basically, life is set up to betray you, to fail you, whenever you make something or someone outside of you your source, because they're not, and because of all the reasons I just said, because it makes you incapable of bringing forth the gifts, the message, the power that you're here for, because you have to start manipulating and controlling and contorting yourself to try to make sure you get what you don't have and keep what you think you need. And so this message came down very clear. It was like, it's almost like, one of the commandments, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And that's literally what dropped in. And I swear, I looked around expecting to see Moses standing there, looking from quite like Charlton Heston, of course. That was my only image of Moses. But this just dropped in. And I was like, whoa. And it shook me. And then it was like a valve got opened up. And all of a sudden, all the stress drained out of me. And this peace came over me. And it was the first time I understood what it means to have the peace that passes human understanding. It was a peace that had no connection to my conditions. It didn't matter what my conditions were. I was in peace. And I fell asleep. And for the next few days, I walked around kind of in peace, even though the bills were still due, the rent was still due, and I still had done a single way to take care of it. I was literally living on a prayer. But I was at peace. I knew that all was well. I was reconnected again to the source. And it was saying, in essence, all is well. And then the phone rang. And it was my previous acting agent. And he said, I know you don't do commercials and stuff anymore because you're too spiritual. Because I was really crazy back then. I thought somehow you couldn't do that. He's like, I know you're like a monk and all this stuff, but they called looking for you just like out of the blue. And I had quit acting, months and months before. And he said, they called looking for you, so it's up to you. And immediately I got the little hit, like, yes, this was answered prayer. So I went on this audition, I booked the job, and for 2 days' work, I made more money than I'd ever made in a year. And so I was taken care of. I was taken care of way more abundantly than my little mind was trying to figure out how I could be taken care of. Because that particular option was totally outside of my paradigm of possibilities. That wasn't even I couldn't even have put that on a vision board if you asked me. It was outside my known self. And that's another big lesson here, was that what's trying to emerge in us, that's why when we try to use our vision boards and all these kind of things, and kind of like, we're literally taking infinity and collapsing it into this finite possibility. And really, this source has infinite organizing potential. So that was the beginning of me learning to live more from insight than from eyesight. Like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom or wherever, where he has to cross the bridge of faith or the path of God. And there's no bridge there. He has to step out on faith and risk falling into a chasm. And only when he totally steps out and begins to walk, trusting on something beyond what his eyes can see, does the bridge begin to appear and take him across the chasm. And so this was the beginning of me learning to totally depend on this invisible principle or source or presence, whatever you want to call it, within me. And that led me through years and years of so-called recessions and people telling me there's no way you're going to make money at this thing, or that, all that, and doing so much better in different areas than my so-called competition against all odds, because I wasn't depending on the outer rules and the outer conditions. I was depending on something that was within, the source within. And when you understand the real nature of wealth, when you know that wealth is not material, wealth is spiritual or energetic. It's like when you look at a fruit tree, the fruit on the tree is not the wealth of the tree. And this is another awakened wealth principle, which is one of the hypnotic wealth spells, is that wealth is material. It's dollar bills, it's, stocks, bonds, cars, houses, whatever. But that's not wealth. That's the fruit of a consciousness of wealth. That's the evidence of a principle, but it's not the wealth. And that's why when the fruit is all gone from the tree, the farmer who understands the tree doesn't go, well, that tree's broke, and cut it down. The farmer knows that it's just as wealthy as when the fruit was on the tree. And if the roots are kept healthy in the soil, in due season, it will produce another harvest and another harvest. And so the farmer focuses more on the roots than the fruits. And so one of the awakened wealth principles is to understand that wealth is spiritual. It's this invisible principle that can transmute the raw soil into the sap and the blossom, the marble, the flower, and the fruit of the tree. And likewise, it's that principle that allows the roots within the soil of our soul to transmute the raw material of our spirit, of our consciousness, of our ideas into the fruit of our life, the dollar bills, the opportunities, etc. And when we keep that, when we focus our attention on the roots and keep those healthy within us, knowing that wealth is that invisible principle and substance, then our life keeps bearing fruit harvest after harvest. Anyways, I could talk endlessly about this without you interjecting, so I'm gonna stop now. I'm gonna stop now and let you ask some questions.
Well, my only question is, you actually use this term, the great reversal. I've heard you speak about it before, because you've given us already so much information about what manifestation really is. But is the great reversal that I believe is what has allowed you to manifest what you need, I mean, seemingly out of thin air over and over, regardless of conditions, if you just summarized it in a way that we could put it to use in our lives, would that be the great reversal?
Yeah, the great reversal is the big paradigm shift we have to have as a foundation, which is that life doesn't happen to you, it happens through you and as you. That the world can't give you anything and it also can't take anything away. That you came here bringing it all with you, and the world is your canvas to paint your masterpiece, or the stage to perform your divine production on, or just a screen to give you feedback telling you where you are in consciousness. But you are the source, and life happens through you and as you, and that's why whatever is missing is what you are not giving, what you are not generating. And so when you understand that, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't matter what seems to be against you. You just turn on the divine power plant within you and start generating whatever you need. And, a power plant doesn't receive energy. It generates it. And it also doesn't sit there with a bunch of energy. So you could be sitting there not feeling good, not feeling inspired. And because the way we've been conditioned, we go, well, I can't work out today because I don't have the energy, or I can't write my book today because I'm not inspired, or I can't really engage in this practice of developing more wealth and abundance because I feel broke and poor and like a loser, And so people judge based on their current emotional, mental state or their physical appearance and let that determine how they feel and think that something has to change outside of them before they can feel differently, or that inspiration has to just, kind of drop on their head or visit them like the muse. But when you know that you're a divine power plant, you can just flick it on and start generating the qualities that you want and need now. You can start feeling abundant and empowered and inspired regardless of what's going on in your life. And the more you do that, regardless of what's going on in your life, the more you take back control of your life and of the whole wealth creation system of your being, so that you no longer are conforming to the world at all. You are being transformed by the renewing of your own heart and mind, and you are a transformer in the world.
Thank you. Very beautiful and very clear. And I love your way with words. It's just unbelievable. Insight instead of eyesight, and you're a divine power plant. I mean, somebody should write a book, just quotes from Rydall. Or seriously, that should be your next book, because I don't think I've ever met anybody who just knows how to you put these words together and just hits you in the heart. So just thank you for that, as well as everything else. And another thing that you mentioned when you were telling your story a little while ago is you said this is one of the hypnotic wealth spells. Could you tell us what a hypnotic wealth spell is? And are there more than just one? Or is there more than just one?
Yeah, I mean, I've discovered about 5 core ones, and that I go, I obviously teach real in depth and help people to wake up from them. And there may be more. I mean, basically, we are walking around in a state of hypnosis, all of us to some degree, because life is already good. Life is already whole and complete and perfect. You can't improve upon life. But, it's not about setting things right. It's about seeing things rightly. But you can be hypnotized into believing all manner of things. They even did an experiment where they would go to people and they did like on a college campus, and they would take a match, they would light the match and let the person see the hot match, they'd blow it out, and then they would touch the person's hand, but with a cold match. In a statistically significant sample, the people would get heat blisters. Well, they never got touched with a hot match. They were hypnotized. In that moment, they were under an auto-suggestion that match was hot and that skin burns when touched by something hot. So their skin did what they believed, just like a hypnotic spell when people are under hypnotic spell. So the same thing happens in all the areas of our life where we bump up against limitation, and wealth is no different. So the 5 core ones that I've discovered are, and we've talked about a little bit of them, that we're separate from our good and that we must get it, achieve it, or attract it. That's basically the number one lie or the number one hypnotic wealth spell, that we're separate from our good and we must get it, achieve it, or attract it. The second thing is that money and things are wealth. And we just talked a little bit about that. The belief that, the number in your bank account, the dollar bills, the material stuff you have, that's your wealth. And the more of that you have, the wealthier you are, and the less of that you have, the poorer you are. I've met a lot of very dollar-rich people that were deeply impoverished and in great fear of losing it all and not enjoying it at all. And I've met people that had very little that were incredibly rich and happy. And, so wealth is this invisible spiritual principle and substance that we've been talking about. It's not things. And when you get that, then you don't worry about the things so much. You don't struggle and strive for them. You don't worry whether you have a few extra pieces of materiality one day and a few less the next, because you know that your source and supply is in you. And somebody can drop you down on a desert island or in the middle of a recession or depression. Who cares? Who cares? You can generate whatever you need regardless of conditions. And we know that to be true. We've seen it happen in any situation where a person has proven that. The next one is you have to believe it to receive it. And we probably don't have time to go into this one, but it's a big one, and it gets to one of the emergence principles, which is act as if it's true. And when you act in accordance with your highest vision in a way that's congruent, you activate what's true about you. So again, you don't have to necessarily feel it or believe it. I remember the first time this came home was when I was a writer and I was up for a writing job, and the guy asked me, how much it would cost to write the script. I was just a consultant on the project. I didn't expect to get a writing job out of it. And I had been thinking that I really wanted to charge, it was like 5 times more than I normally did. And it was about time I did, but I was so scared to do it. And I was definitely not confident about it. And so when he asked me, I went into a panic. Inside of me, I was in a panic. But what came out of my mouth was, oh, that will be XYZ dollars. And I was in a panic. And I was like, and then he looked at the paper and looked at me, and my mind's going, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you did that. He's going to think you're crazy, insane. Who do you think you are? You don't deserve this. You're not worth this. That's what my mind was doing. So I certainly didn't believe it. And he looks back at me and he goes, okay, we'll have them cut you a check on Friday. And I walked out of there and I was like, what just happened? I thought you had to really believe it to have it in your life, to receive it. And it turns out that's not true at all. You just have to ask. And so you have to step into that next stage of what you're going to claim. And that's what I like. One of the things about the Awakened Wealth work is helping people to learn how to claim what they're worth, how to earn what they're worth, how to keep more what they have. And you can start doing this even before you absolutely believe it, because you will activate the belief as you step into it. So that's one of the hypnotic spells. The other one is you have to adapt to circumstance. This is the number one worst thing to do. And it sounds so normal. We hear it all the time. We need to learn to adapt and adjust. And it doesn't mean not to be flexible. But what that looks like in practical terms when people adapt is, let's say there's a recession or something. So what they do is they shrink to match the condition. It's like, well, there's not a lot of jobs going on, not a lot of money in circulation, so I'm going to slow down, I'm going to cut back, I'm going to give less to charity, I'm going to spend less and save more. And they basically shrink to adjust and adapt to conform to the limited appearance. And on the other side of that experience once that contraction period is over, they are smaller. But if you are willing and understand this principle, which is the awakened wealth principle, is to expand in the face of contraction. Because the appearance doesn't tell you what's true. It just tells you an old belief. You are the source of infinite abundance. So you want to expand in the face of contraction, and then that contraction becomes the thing that stretches you. And on the other side of that, you are bigger, you have more, and your life is more abundant than before. That's why as I've gone through recessions and had friends losing houses and all kinds of stuff happening, my life was continuing to grow. Because I was making very specific choices. I remember one time I wanted to cut my charity in half, and I was doing all these normal things, and I stopped myself and I said, wait a second. If this stuff you teach and think about is true, which is that you are a source of infinite abundance, how would infinite abundance respond in this moment? And it's different for everyone, but I checked in and I said, what's the truth? How would infinite abundance respond in this moment? And what bubbled up was I would double my charity. I was like, whoa, wait a second. Who said that? I was like, you don't understand, voice, the economy's not doing so well and I don't know where my next client's coming from. And the voice said, double your charity. So I did that. And on the other side of that experience, my business had doubled at least, and so much more had shown up. And then finally, money and wealth is not spiritual. And this is a big one for many heart-centered people, which is, they want to have more abundance in their life. They really want that. They value that, but they also have all this baggage about money and success and wealth. It's dirty and it's corrupt and it corrupts you. And money is the root of all evil. And which, by the way, that saying actually isn't money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. And even that is a misnomer or a misunderstanding, because all money is a symbol of an energetic exchange. Before it was dollar bills, it was chickens. So let's just replace it with back the day when it was chickens. The love of chickens is the root of all evil. It's like, it doesn't make sense anymore, right? I mean, I guess there's certain kind of chicken love that would be a little bit, I don't know. But so the love of chickens, or if you understand money is just energy, the love of energy is the root of all evil. Really? I don't think so. And so you start to unpack these false beliefs and go, yeah, this isn't true. And then what I help people understand is that people aren't your source of wealth. They're merely a channel of it. And when you know that you're the source, every transactional relationship becomes a transformational one. So those are the 5 hypnotic wealth spells in a nutshell, or in an acorn shell.
Well, that is so fantastic. I have to tell you 2 things. One is, how many of us have heard that voice? And I love you when you said to the voice, but you don't understand, voice. I don't have the money. And how many of us have said that to the voice and then said, you don't understand, I can't even afford to give this to my charity, and then we don't. But you said you don't understand, voice, and you did it anyway. And that is so profound for all of us in all areas of life. And I just have to tell you a very, very quick story. I was with the great spiritual teacher, Sri Ravi Shankar, and he was talking about being vegetarian, and somebody challenged him, and he said, but I need to eat chicken, to feel healthier. And he said, well, it's better than eating a cow, because when you look into the eyes of a cow, you see their soul and you see their depth. And when you look into the eyes of the chicken, you can't as easily say, oh, my chicken, I love you so much. Because there's not a lot of depth in the eyes of the chicken. I don't know, maybe he's wrong, but I had to just share that when you said about how chickens are the root of all evil, because that was the medium of exchange at one point.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. I've looked into the eyes of some pretty wise chickens, and I don't know. If you look into the eyes of a chicken long enough, you can find true love. So I don't know. Maybe that's the content for another call. Chicken love. But
right, chicken love. We could do a telesummit together. We could put on a webinar on chicken love. Yeah. Anyway, those 5 were so profound, and now we want 7. We want the 7 gifts that give you everything, because you said that mastering these will unlock the mysteries of abundance. So can you share with us now those 7 gifts?
I guess it would be kind of ironic if I was like wanted to withhold now when we're talking about the 7 gifts, right? I was like, come on, Debra, I've given enough already, haven't I? Do I really have to give the 7 gifts too? And I'll have to go through this kind of quickly, obviously, because, I teach whole classes on the 7 gifts. But the basic core thing is that once you know that life happens through and as you, and that the true nature of life and of wealth and abundance is spiritual or energetic, and it's all within you just waiting to come out, and you know that that's the real nature of wealth, not the stuff that's showing up in your life, now you got to go, okay, well, and you start to realize that you have to put your dependence on that. Now the question goes, okay, great, Derek. Well, now how do I get it out? How do I start to get that circulation flowing again in my life? And so you first have to understand the law of circulation, which says you cannot give what you don't have. So you have to first give it to yourself. You have to first activate it within yourself. But then you cannot keep what you don't give. So you have to give it away. You have to radiate it. And then you cannot sustain what you don't receive. So you have to give it to yourself, activate it. You have to give it away, radiate it. You have to receive it to sustain it. And that's one cycle. And that's like a breath. The breath goes in, the breath goes out, the breath comes back in again. We're born, we take a breath, we leave this plane, we exhale that breath. Life is one circulation of a breath. And wealth is one circulation of one singular energetic. And we must be participating in that circulation by activating, radiating, and receiving. Activating, radiating, and receiving. So the 7 gifts allow you to participate in that circulation. And they are as follows: giving forth, giving away, giving up, giving in, giving thanks, giving to yourself, and forgiving. And I'll touch upon a few of these. So the first one, giving forth, is to give forth of your time, your talent, and your treasure. It's the material things you have to offer to the world. You have your time, your service, you have your talent, your gifts, and you have your treasure, which is your form of abundance. And so that looks like, giving to charity or whatever, finding ways to express your gifts and talents in the world. And why is this important to be one of the gifts? Because it might seem kind of obvious. Well, many people are waiting for the right circumstance to start giving this gift. They're waiting to have more time before they can give of their time. They're waiting to have more money before they can give to charity and live into their desire to be philanthropic or whatever. They're waiting, especially those people that have that impulse but aren't honoring it because they don't think they have enough money. And many people want to, give their gifts, be a singer or a writer or whatever, but they're waiting for a condition, a validation, something. And they've got it completely backwards. Because remember, whatever's missing is what you're not giving. Life happens through you, not to you. What you're waiting for, you're actually waiting with, and you're weighing it down. And so here you've got to look at, I've got this gift. Let's say I'm a singer. Nobody's inviting me to sing for them. Where can I start giving that gift? Even if you have to put on a concert for your cat, you do that. You start there. And I've only got $10 in the bank. I don't have enough money to give to charity. You give a dime in that little box at the cash register. You start there. And so this first gift gets you to start circulating the gifts that you have, your time, your talent, your treasure. The second one, giving away. This is for all those things you're holding on to that you don't really need or use. Your books, your clothes, things in your car, your junk drawer, your closet, your garage, that stack of magazines you will never read, but you keep telling yourself you might. Those clothes you will never wear, but you bought them, so you better not give them away. All this stuff is psychic baggage. It's all connected to a sense of lack, a fear of not having enough, shame, guilt. And when you start giving away all the things you really don't need or use anymore, you free up the energetic space for that which you really do need and really will use in a larger life to flow into your experience. So that's giving away. Giving up. This is all the habits of mental, emotional, physical habits that are no longer really congruent with what you're trying to become in your life and who you want to be, the complaining, the gossiping, the judging, etc. And you know it. There's those moments where you complain. You're like, I don't really want to complain, but there I go again. And there's these things you know you need to give up. And so when you start to give up those habits that are not congruent with who you really are, you open up a space for the next stage of your evolution, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to emerge. It's knocking on the door, but it can't get in because you're still holding on to those habits that are no longer congruent with it, that are not a match for it. And then giving in. This is those areas where you are holding on to a way of life where, it's like the acorn has activated the oak tree within it, but now the oak's emerging and the shell's cracking, and the acorn's like, I can't let go of my protective shell. What's going to protect me? Because the acorn is still stuck in an identity that it's an acorn. It doesn't realize it won't need the shell anymore. So there's those places in our life where we're holding on to an old way of life that's cracking because we've activated the oak of our being. And we have to let go of our protective shells, of our familiar things that we think are keeping us safe and helping us, but they're actually holding us back. So that's giving in. Then there's giving to yourself. And this is so crucial for people that are heart-centered and struggle with the shadow of selfishness. And it's like looking and finding those places in your life where you're trying to get something from someone, validation, approval, love, acceptance, recognition, whatever, and beginning to activate it and generate it and give it to yourself. Like I'm in a relationship and that person doesn't appreciate me. Well, it's not their job to appreciate you. It's your job to appreciate you. And if you activate that within yourself and you start asking, what would it look like to totally, deeply, and completely appreciate myself? What would it look like to appreciate myself in the presence of that person? What would it look like? And you start to then act on that guidance. You will start to activate an appreciation that nobody can ever take away from you. And because people treat you the way you train them based on how you treat yourself, wonders of all wonders start to find people start appreciating you more because that's who you are now. So that's giving to yourself. And then there's giving thanks, which is the arc of gratitude is we start off with nothing to give thanks. We're not thankful for anything. We're thankful, for nothing. Then we have to learn to be thankful for something. Then we learn to be thankful for everything. And then finally we come back around and we're thankful for nothing, meaning we're thankful for no reason. We are gratitude. And when you are in a state of gratitude, the universe will just keep giving you reasons to be thankful. So that's the gift of thanks, giving thanks. And then finally, forgiveness. And this is really, really huge. A lot of people don't really understand what forgiveness is, but I'll talk about it in the context of debt. That wherever there's debt in your life, there is almost always a story of unforgiveness. Because when you are not forgiving someone or yourself, you're saying, they owe me something. An apology, they owe me that year they took away, whatever. Or I owe them something. So it's you owe me and I owe you. And what do you have when you have a bunch of IOUs? You have debt. So you have psychic, emotional debt, and that shows up in your life as stagnation, and often and many times in terms of wealth and abundance as debt and stagnation in terms of that. But when you start to release them from their debt and release yourself from that debt through a true understanding of forgiveness, you start the circulation again in those stagnated areas. And those swampy parts of your life become beautiful oases. Oases or oases, I'm not sure what the right word is. And so those are the 7 gifts. Those are the 7 gifts. And of course, I went through them really fast, but I think you can get the scope and of what's possible there. And when I work with people, we do a 40-day giving challenge where we go through and master, one or more of those gifts over a period of time, and your whole life just starts to open up in pretty miraculous ways.
I think that if anybody just picked one of the 7 and made it a practice, it would completely transform their lives.
Totally. And that's why it's not about doing them all at once. It's like, what's the one that speaks to you the most? Either it has the biggest charge, it creates the greatest challenge, or it's just like, oh my God, that inspires me. What's the one that has the biggest charge for you? That's the place to start.
Yeah, and even if you just, dipped your toes into one of them, like let's say it was giving away, you just, just the one pile of magazines,
Yes.
I just got it that would start shifting the energy so profoundly. All 7 of these. I don't know where you get this knowledge from. You must just be a pure channel, because I've heard some of this before, but never with the clarity, never framed the way you've done it. And it's so usable for everybody.
Well, that's what I love about the 7-gift framework, is that it's so practical. A lot of these principles, if you get these principles and you have the shift in consciousness, it will change your life. But also we like to know, what can I get my hands around? What can I actually do? And I think that's why this work of Awakened Wealth has been some of the most directly successful, the amount of breakthroughs people have and the consistency of it, because the framework is so practical. And everybody can do these 7, can practice this. And one of the things about the magazine, as an example, it's not just the giving away of the stuff, but like I said, there is, once you start to give it away, then you see what's been hiding underneath that stack of magazines. And I don't just mean an old flattened Chinese box of food, but I mean like energetically and emotionally, the attachment and what it really means to you. Because the reason we hold on to stuff is because of a deeper reason. There's a deeper emotional, psychological issue. So when we get rid of it, we actually quicken a healing in our life. We clean up our energetic field, our emotional body. And so we're healed and we progress and we evolve. And then that new opening, that new space is what allows for the next stage of our life to emerge. So it's very, very profound. It seems simple, but it's very profound.
It is extremely profound, and I think we're all wanting to go start on these things and obviously hear what more you have to offer us. And I know that you were going to do some energy work with us on instantly shifting our frequency and clearing some wealth blockages. Can we do that now?
Absolutely. And just so you all know, even as I'm talking, I'm doing a form of linguistic vibrational work, so that it's not just that you're hearing my words, but that there's an energetic behind the words. So even as you've been listening and as you've been hearing things that are striking you and resonating with you, there's an energetic field that's being created here that you can lean into, and it will support you and it will nourish you and it will lift you even beyond a particular exercise. Just know that this whole call is high frequency encoded for you. So we can go into this. And what I invite you to do now is we're going to do a little exercise to help you just get a little bit of a feeling of this inner wealth and reconnect and realign this energy. And then afterwards, I'm going to do a brief little quantum healing to lock it in place. And I want you to take a moment and look at an area where we talked about earlier how the universe is set up to betray you, what I call the big betrayal, when you've made something or someone outside of you your source. So just take a moment and become aware of some place where you feel like you've made someone or something your source, where you've given away your power. And it could be your job, your bank account, your spouse. It can be your source of money or wealth, or because it's ultimately dealing with spiritual supply and the principle that everything's within you, you could even focus on a non-monetary area if you can't find a money area, although we're focusing in general on issues around wealth and abundance. So just close your eyes and look at that relationship, whether it's a relationship with a person or with the bank account or whatever, and notice how you feel in it. Maybe it's a job that you don't really like and you don't really want to be there, but you think you have to be. Just feel how it makes you feel to be in a relationship where you believe something or someone is your source. Notice how your energy goes down. Maybe there's feelings of disempowerment, stress. Notice how you act in that relationship in those moments where you are saying yes when you really want to say no, when you're saying no to yourself when you really want to say yes. In this space, give yourself permission to pull the curtain back, to really see and feel what this relationship is costing you. Because the ego's job is to keep you the same, so it will oftentimes not really let us feel that what we're doing and what it's costing us, because if we really feel it, change will become inevitable. So in this moment, really give yourself permission to feel the pain that this relationship of believing someone or something is your source of what it's really costing you in terms of self-worth, self-esteem, and maybe even noticing it's not even really working that well anyway. You've kind of sold out in some way and still it's not working. You're still not happy. You're still not getting enough. You're still not doing what you really want to do or being who you want to be. Just notice that, feel that. Give yourself permission to just turn up the volume on that so that you are fully present, because you cannot heal what you aren't willing to feel. And even now, as you're willing to fully see where you've been playing that game unconsciously and to no fault of your own, it's already starting to shift now. Now, as we begin to shift this, I want you to, again, remember the principle that that person or that thing, the job, the money, the bank account, the spouse, they aren't your source. They are the channel of your abundance, but they're never your source. It always comes from you. Even if you're married and your husband or wife makes all the money, you couldn't experience that in your life if it wasn't an activity of your consciousness. It's all coming from you, even when it appears to come from others. You are the source. So just let yourself feel your way back to that truth. And to help you with this, recall a time in your life when you did feel empowered around money or wealth. Just recall a time when you felt like you had abundance, where you felt like you had enough. And if you have a hard time finding something around wealth and abundance, just recall a time when you just felt like you really were in possession of something important or valuable, like a talent, an ability. It's that feeling of having. I have. I can. I am. Feel what it feels like to be the source, to have ownership, to have possession. Just load that quality in. And take a deep breath. And as you exhale, let that feeling tone, even if it's a glimmer, expand to begin to fill your heart and your chest. And now I want you to imagine in this situation or wherever maybe where you feel stuck and you're waiting for something, just imagine that you get whatever you're waiting for. You get that job, you get that promotion, you get that check. You have an abundance of money. And I want you to let yourself really imagine that. See yourself receiving that. See yourself living that. Feel what it feels like. You get that windfall. You know, even if you have to imagine something, you win the lottery, your business suddenly explodes with success. Really let yourself see it and feel it. So now you've loaded that deeper quality of feeling and abundance and success in. Notice how that feels. Now I want you to take another deep breath, and as you exhale, let that feeling expand to fill your whole body, and you can give it a color. So we've loaded in this consciousness of having, of abundance, of success. And I want you to notice another thing, that nothing has changed in your external life. But if you're practicing this to some degree, you've gotten a glimpse of it, you can now see that those feelings that you thought were dependent on people, places, and things have nothing to do with them, that you're able to feel abundant, feel successful, feel like you have, feel empowered, regardless of conditions. Even if it's just a glimmer, that glimmer can be grown into a wildfire. And that feeling tone is the very substance of your abundance. So now I want you to look back at that place or that person that you thought was your source before to some extent. And as you take another deep breath, I want you to feel yourself radiating this energy that you've activated, radiating it to this person, to this place, indeed radiating it to every area of your life. So you see it as a color, you feel it as an energetic, you are radiating it. Feel how good it feels to be the source. You're filling yourself up, You're radiating it to everybody around you and specifically to those places where you felt like they were your source. And now from this place, even as I'm helping you to shift this energetically, ask yourself, if I really knew and believed that I was the source of all good in my life, that this presence within me, whatever name you call it, really was a source of infinite supply and abundance, who would I be in this relationship or situation now? How would I hold myself? How would I act? What would I start doing? What would I stop doing? What would I do more or less of or differently? If I really believed that I was the source, and listen to what emerges. You might get a flash, an impression, a thought. The next stage of your own evolution, the next stage you are being called to step into. And now ask the question, how can I start living into this truth of my abundant being, of being source today, this week? How can I start living as if it's true? And then feel the energy of commitment. Feel, if you've ever felt commitment, load that quality in. I'm committed to taking this action. I'm committed to stepping into my power, to beginning to live like source. To begin to live as the cause of my life, not as if I'm at the effect of it. Feel that fire of commitment as I now drop down into this field of grace and activate, stirring this divinity into activity and striking this deeper chord of memory. As I recognize with absolute certainty that there is only one energy, one power, one source, one substance that is infinitely expressing everywhere in its fullness, in its wholeness, in its perfection, that all the greatness, all the wealth, all the health and the happiness and the good that is ever expressed anywhere as anyone is right now expressing everywhere as everyone, but it must be consciously realized and activated. And in this holy instant, in this sacred session, I am activating this truth right where each and every one of these individuals is. They are individuals, which means undivided from the whole. Not separate people and bodies and lives, but unique emanations of the one light, unique waves on the one ocean, unique branches of the one tree of life, individualized expressions of infinite power and inexhaustible wealth, pure genius and radiant love. This is the truth about these individuals. And it's being activated now. And all the false concepts and limited beliefs and old stories that have heretofore seemingly hindered, blocked, delayed, or denied this truth from unfolding is being dissolved and disintegrated right now. In the fire of this truth, it is being burned up. Anything that does not support it is being eliminated. And whatever needs to be realized or released, embraced, or done to facilitate the emergence of the next step of their evolution, their destiny of greatness, it's happening now. All needs are met on every level. Everything is working together for good. And life is truly magnificent right where these individuals are. Mighty miracles are breaking out. I'm just so grateful. I know that it's done. And I lovingly let it be. And so it is.
Okay. That was beyond powerful. So I'm going to let you talk so I can come out of this a little bit slowly. And can you just perhaps maybe share with us right now some of the profound turnarounds that you've seen in people's lives that have put to use what you teach?
Absolutely. And gosh, I mean, I'm in space too. It's like there's lots of words there, but there's just a space, and I don't want to rush people because, the silence, that moment when you touch the truth that frequency, this moment right here is pregnant with possibility. And I just want you all to take a deep breath and know and feel and accept for yourself that it's done. That something real has just happened. That your life will never be the same. Because this moment is not a means to some future moment. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Now is the appointed time. And if you're willing to accept that and agree on that with us together in this vortex of agreement, we will hear about real miracles. And as I've done this work and done the Awakened Wealth work recently, the amount of breakthroughs and healings and testimonials have been more than I've ever experienced. And I think it's a combination of, because it's really the balance of the deep transformational work and also the practical application of it. When those two meet, you're in the world but not of it, and magic and miracles really do happen. There's been lots of testimonials. I don't have the specific testimonials in front of me. They're on the page of the program, but I've had people that were on the verge of bankruptcy start to do this work, and in a matter of a month or two, not only not be in bankruptcy anymore, but go to their banker, and their banker's like, I don't know how you did this. This isn't possible. They were telling them they had to sell their house, sell their business, and now they're like, they've got more business than they know what to do with. I've had people that were broke, living in their car on, several dozen medications alone, and do this work, and in a matter of a couple months, now living in their own place, engaged to be married, working, people that have done this work and have made more money in a month than they've made all year, that have been trying to sell property. This is all just in the last round. They were trying to sell property and hadn't been able to sell a place for, I think, a year and a half. And after doing this work, they were in the process of actually closing 3 deals. They hadn't had a deal in a year and a half, and they were closing 3 deals. I'd had people where they couldn't get a job, and they had multiple job offers. People that they'd never won anything in their lives and suddenly won these amazing trips and retreats and contests. So the wealth shows up as whatever is the wealth you need in your life right now. So for some, it's selling a house. For some, it's buying a house. For some, it's selling land. For some, it's winning a contest. For some, it's getting a job or making, a certain amount of money. For others, it's actually a physical healing in their body so that they can have the strength and the energy to go out and do it. And for others, we talked about debt earlier. In the last go-around, we had tens of thousands of dollars in debt get eliminated as people started to practice the gifts. And they would have things like someone that owed them money for at least a year, maybe it was longer, who just sort of called them out of the blue and said, I've been thinking about you, and I know I owe you this money, and I'm going to send it to you. Or even somebody was doing the work, and her daughter was owed money, and the person paid the daughter back. Because as you do this work, everybody in your field starts to get affected because we're shifting your frequency and your vibration. And then other people who had healings in their relationships, because so many issues in relationships is based on either literally on money and finance, or because we believe somebody is our source of something. So we're trying to get it from them, whether it's love, appreciation, validation. And they feel that and they withdraw, and it creates all kinds of conflicts in relationships. When they understand the awakened wealth principles and stop trying to get it from each other and instead show up to give it, to generate it, miracles happen in relationship, and people start really showing up in a very different way. So we've had lots of healings around relationships as well. So those are some of the, just in brief, some of the different kinds of breakthroughs people have had.
Very good. Well, thank you. And that gave us a little time to reemerge into third-dimensional reality from that unbelievable, I can only say journey that you took us on, journey into ourselves. So what I would like to invite everybody to do now, I know that Derek has put together a very, very special package for everybody listening today, and I encourage you to go to take a look at his special offer right now and experience it for yourself. I don't think I have to encourage you to do that. I think probably everybody's ready, and you could just click on the special offer button that's on this webpage. So, Derek, can you let everyone know what they'll find there?
Yeah, we've been talking about some of the core ideas and principles, and they can, scroll down the page and actually see what's in the courses, the different modules. But before that, I want to also talk about that not only are you going to get this comprehensive deep dive program that basically where I've taken all that I've learned around creating a life of true wealth, really mastering the energy of money and manifesting everything that I need and more than I've imagined in many cases, and distilled it into this program. And it's over 15 hours of in-depth training. But also, I'm including some really cool bonuses that are designed to accelerate the training and facilitate it. And one of them is the Awakened Wealth Mastermind private group, where you'll get to network and support and be supported by other people that are having amazing breakthroughs around this, which is always very inspiring. And energetically, there's this new morphic field, if you understand morphic resonance, where people just getting into the group start to see shifts happen because the collective agreement in the group, the energetic lift, starts to work on you even before you work on yourself. And there's actually science behind that, quantum physics behind that. And kind of like if you drive in behind a semi, you can actually get pulled in the lift, in the backdraft of the semi. Same thing happens energetically when you're in the field of people that are operating at a certain vibration or at a certain agreement. You will slide into that level and it will lift you. So that's a very powerful group, and you get that as a bonus. And then also the quantum healing, where during the next 30 days, I'm going to actually be doing real live quantum healing work for you, where I'll be going into this energetic field and doing this kind of work to help dissolve the limited frequencies and beliefs and stuff that you may have around wealth and abundance and activate the higher frequencies. And this will also, people have reported having so much resistance coming into the program and then thinking they couldn't do these things and they weren't going to be able to do it, and finding it was so much easier to actually do the work and to stay the course, like really stick to it, than they've ever had before in a program. And that's largely because there's this energetic and vibrational support. You're being held, you're being supported. So that's very, very powerful stuff. And it heals and begins to purify a lot of things that we're not even aware of, beyond just wealth. So that's the core of the work. And then if you look down a little bit further, you can see kind of what's in these classes specifically, what we're going to work on. And in each of these modules, we're going to bust one of these wealth myths and do the underlying work to really wake you up from that hypnotic wealth spell and to deliver the awakened wealth truths. We're going to go into the 7 sacred gifts in depth, and we're going to design a practice around them. So you're not just kind of randomly wondering which one should I work on and when and how much. And we're going to design a practice, and it's going to become part of the 40-day giving challenge, where you'll also have support in the group to really focus on the right gifts for you over that period of time and really transform your lives. You will never think about, feel about, or look at wealth, abundance, and money again the same way. That's my guarantee. Then we're also going to work on your money mastery map. So we're not just going to, again, be doing great transformational work, but we're going to put it all together into a practical approach and plan, as well as a daily strategy, what I call the daily lift practice, so that you're going to design a way of life and a strategy, and you're going to have a plan. So it's not just going to be throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it works. I'm going to give you all the structure that you need, and you can take as much of it or as little of it. But just as certain trees and plants need structure to grow until they're strong enough to hold themselves up, they need like a stake in the ground, they need the mesh. I'm creating a structure energetically in the group and in the program so that you have the support you need, so that this doesn't just become more shelf help, but it becomes true, deep self-help, self with a capital S. And that, you don't just end up finding yourself 6 months from now repeating the same patterns again, like Groundhog Day, that you actually have the support you need to stay the course and to get real world results. And by the way, the setup for all that is just in the first class. Then we're going to go deeper into the real nature of wealth, the 25 ways to manifest more. which is a powerful, deceptively simple but powerful practice to help you just start turning on that power plant and generating opportunities in your life now. Because I know a lot of you need help now. You're like, this is all great, Derek. Long term, I'm awakening. It's all wonderful, and I'll have a vision and a mission and a purpose and a plan. But you know what? I need to pay my rent like this month. I need to bring some cash in fast. So the 25 ways to manifest more is an accelerator for that. As well as everything we're doing energetically is going to accelerate that. But this is a really, really fun way that helps people do that. And so you can just scroll down here. I don't need to read every little thing because you can see it. It's on the page. But you can see that we're going to really build each module on how to become a master of awakened wealth in your life, how to really wake up from all these myths and master the 7 gifts. In class 3, which is a particularly fun one, for those of you that are coaches, authors, teachers, consultants, entrepreneurs, and you have gifts to give the world, but you have a hard time charging and charging enough and charging what you're worth and feeling good about it, this is going to blow your mind. This is going to totally radically change the way you look at relationships and transactional relationships, as I was saying earlier, how to turn every transaction into a transformation so that not only will people want to give you their money for your gifts, but they will be blessed as a result of it. Not just blessed by the stuff you're giving them in return, but because your consciousness of that transformational relationship will create a space where their abundance is expanded rather than diminished. And likewise, whenever you're spending money and circulating it, you're going to be able to do it from a consciousness of knowing that you are not diminished by every dollar you circulate, but that you are expanded by it. And you have more. The more you circulate your wealth, the more wealth you will end up having. Because remember, it's not material, it's spiritual. And it's just like if you teach, the more wisdom you circulate, you don't run out of wisdom. After you've taught, you don't go, oh my God, I better not teach that or I won't have any more to teach. Your depth and your ability to teach gets deeper and stronger, and you have more and more and more. The same is true of your wealth and abundance. So again, go through this to see what's in there, unless, Debra, you want to point out anything special. There's even some frequently asked questions here. But go ahead, Debra, you can say something.
Well, I was going to say one thing when you were talking about all of the different components, and the one thing that you said was that there is an accelerator, because I love that point that what you do is you open us up to a lifetime of abundance, inner and outer. And then the question that somebody might have is, yes, but I have to pay the rent. But if you look at these testimonials like Kathleen's, before I even completed the first session, my daughter texted me to inform me that she was reimbursed for a trip to Greece that I funded, a debt owed to me for almost a year. And boom, because you just kind of open us up to these miracles where time I don't know, it's like we can break the wave function, and these things that we think are going to take years or, lifetimes can happen in an instant.
Absolutely. That's the real meaning of a miracle. A miracle is an instantaneous demonstration of ultimate reality. It's a demonstration of what already is. And when you understand that your abundance, your good, it's already broadcasting right here, just like your favorite music is already playing, but you can't hear it unless you tune into the station where it's playing. So that when your frequency matches that frequency, you get the music. But you didn't make the music happen, and it wasn't in your future or in the distance. It was right where you are, but you had to match frequencies. And what this work does is it helps us tune in very fast. And so that's why, I've seen things happen that should take days, weeks, months, or years happen in a fraction of that time. And in some cases, in minutes. And that's not an exaggeration. So, but the wealth shows up. The wealth that you need most is what shows up. The healing you need most is what shows up as you do this work.
Yes. Amen. And as our listeners have probably gotten the picture, that I've known you for a while, and I've seen that happen in so many people's lives that with your work, it doesn't even surprise me anymore because I've seen it so often. And your work is such a gift to all of us. And I just want to give everybody one more time, just click on the special offer button that's on this page.
Real quick, I won't want to forget, is for those of you that are experiencing what I call a threshold, where it's like, I really want to do this, but what if it doesn't work for me? What if it's, no, I'm just not wired for wealth, or whatever the things that are going through your mind right now. Just know that that's what you're experiencing right now. If you're wanting to do this work, if you're feeling what I call the emerging impulse, the inner yes, what it's bumping up against, that's your threshold. And pay attention, because that is what could be one of the most powerful coaching moments for you, because what's coming up in you right now is what stops you throughout your life. Not from doing this, but from saying yes to your yes and stepping into the next stage of your growth. And again, I know this from personal experience of having lived it in the laboratory of my own mind over and over again. And when you're willing to say yes to your yes, if it's a yes, even though it's covered up by all the what if this isn't and what if that, when I did it, not only did more money show up, but more of me showed up, more of everything showed up. The next stage of your life that you've been waiting for will show up. So that's the one thing I want to say. And the other thing I want to say is, because I understand how the ego works, like all of my programs, there's absolutely no risk in coming and playing with us. So you can get into the program, you can listen to it all, you can do the work, you can do the giving challenge, you can get the quantum healing from me, all of that. And if after 30 days of experiencing all of that, if for whatever reason you still don't feel like it's everything that I say it is and more, then you just ask for a refund. So that there's absolutely nothing to risk and everything to gain in terms of taking your life finally to that next level. Because that's what matters most to me. Because remember, I endeavor to practice this. I know that you're not my source. So if you get in the program and you get what you need to get, then I'm happy. That's my invitation to you. And I also invite you just to look at the whole page so that you have all the information that you need.
Very good. You give so much. Just reading this page can bring it. Just we can feel that feeling of emergence. It's everything you do, everything you are, just embodies your teaching, and I think that's why we want to take advantage of this, because we want to also be vibrating in that place. And well, I guess all there is to say is just ask you: are there any final words that you can share with us before we say goodbye?
I would just say that, if nothing else, please know that what I'm telling you is not theory, that what I'm telling you is the truth of you, that you really are the source of everything in your life. You are the source of infinite wealth, abundance, and everything else that you could ever need. You are powerful beyond imagination, that is the truth. And if you do nothing else, I invite you to contemplate that, to consider that, to journal about that, to pray, to know that even deeper, and to practice asking every day, if this is the truth about me, and it is, what would I do today? How would I be today to take a step out as if this is true? So if you do nothing else, I invite you to do that and to let that seed that's been planted today be able to take root so that it can germinate and blossom into an incredibly fruitful life for you. So I love and appreciate you all, and you're in my heart, and I hope you come and play. And until next time, stay inspired.
Thank you so much. This has been beyond amazing. And thank you to everyone for spending this time with me and with Derek Rydall. And I look forward to when we're all together again. This is Debra Poneman. Have a wonderful rest of your day.